imagine being just minutes away from ending the longest playoff drought in hockey history. Imagine standing on the edge of redemption, up 4-1 in Game 7, staring down your most hated rival, and already hearing the sound of the next round calling your name, and then watching it all unravel in front of millions. For the Toronto Maple Leafs, May 13th, 2013 wasn't just a playoff game. It was a nightmarish collapse that would haunt an entire franchise and its fans for years to come. It wasn't just losing a game, it was the way it happened. The cruel, unthinkable way it happened. This is the story of how the Leafs had it all, lost it all, and why this single night became one of the most infamous meltdowns in hockey history. The 2012-13 NHL season was already strange before this series ever started. A lockout wiped out half the season, compressing the schedule to just 48 games. Everything felt off, unpredictable, volatile. For Boston, they were only 2 years removed from their 2011 Stanley Cup victory. Their core, Kara, Bergeron, Krejci, Lucic, Marchand, Rask, was still intact. On paper, they were still the bullies of the East, but in the final stretch of the season, their offense vanished. They limped into the playoffs, shaken, and with the emotional weight of the Boston Marathon bombing hanging over the city, they carried the slogan "Boston Strong" on their backs. Toronto, meanwhile, had no business being there at all. They hadn't made the playoffs since 2004. They were mocked for years after trading away multiple first-round picks for Phil Kessel, a move that Boston fans loved to remind them of. Every year, Leafs fans suffered, and yet somehow, in this shortened season, something clicked. Under coach Randy Carlyle, with James Reimer holding the fort in net and a shooting percentage that seemed unsustainably lucky, the Leafs clawed into the playoffs. To most analysts, they were smoke and mirrors, but to Leafs fans, none of that mattered. For the first time in nearly a decade, Toronto had playoff hockey. The first 2 games told the story of this rivalry perfectly. In Game 1, Toronto jumped out early but then got crushed by Boston's physicality. The Bruins stormed back with 4 unanswered goals to take a 4-1 win. The message was clear: welcome back to the playoffs, Toronto. You're not ready. But in Game 2, the Leafs fought back. A gutsy 4-2 win showed they weren't going to roll over. Suddenly there was hope. Then came Games 3 and 4. Boston smothered Toronto again, and Leafs captain Dion Phaneuf made a brutal pinch in overtime that led to the Bruins' game winner. Media in Toronto pounced, calling the series over. The city was ready to pile yet another collapse onto the Leafs' legacy. But then something shifted. James Reimer, often criticized, stood tall. He stopped 72 of 74 shots over Games 5 and 6. Phil Kessel, playing against the team that traded him, came alive. The Leafs clawed back, forcing a Game 7 at TD Garden. A city dared to believe again. The energy inside TD Garden that night was electric. Bruins fans were rowdy, Leafs fans were anxious, and both sides knew something historic was about to happen. Early on, the Bruins looked to set the tone physically. Kara, the towering captain, targeted Phil Kessel and James Van Riemsdyk. The Bruins wanted intimidation to win the game before the scoreboard did. It worked briefly. Cody Franson, under pressure, turned the puck over, leading to Boston's opening goal. A nightmare start, but in hockey, redemption comes quickly. Franson struck back twice. 2 goals from the same player who had made the early mistake, and suddenly the Leafs had their first lead of the night. After 2 periods, Toronto was up 2-1. In a hostile building against a veteran Bruins team, the Maple Leafs, the underdogs, were on the verge of rewriting history. The third period was when the dream turned into what felt like destiny. Phil Kessel, often mocked for his quiet demeanor and questioned for his playoff impact, had his moment. Battling with Milan Lucic in the corner, Kessel tied up his stick, won the puck battle, and found himself in position to score. He buried it. 3-1 Toronto. Minutes later, Kessel was at it again. This time on a 2-on-1, he shot low, off Tuukka Rask's pad, perfectly setting up a rebound for Nazem Kadri. Goal, 4-1 Toronto. The Leafs bench erupted. Fans in the stands were celebrating like it was over. Tyler Bozak, sidelined with injury, was already getting congratulatory texts. See you in round 2. Even Bruins commentators admitted defeat. This wasn't just a lead, it was the Leafs' redemption. After years of failure, they were finally going to do it, or so it seemed. Hockey is cruel, and sometimes it takes just one small moment for everything to change. With 10 minutes left on the clock, Milan Lucic decided he wasn't ready to let the season die. Charging into the Leafs zone with the kind of power only he could generate, he bulldozed his way past defenders. Instead of firing immediately, he swung wide, circled the net, and made the kind of heads-up play that breaks opponents' spirits. From behind the goal line, Lucic threaded a perfect centering pass straight to Nathan Horton. In one swift motion, Horton buried it. Suddenly it was 4-2, and the Garden roared back to life. At first glance, it was just one goal. Toronto still had a 2-goal cushion with time winding down. But if you've watched enough playoff hockey, you know momentum is more dangerous than talent, and in that moment, Boston had it. The Leafs tried to steady themselves, but you could feel the nerves creeping in. Passes weren't as crisp, clearing attempts were rushed. Instead of dictating play, they were reacting, and then came the chance, the moment that could have sealed the game and erased all doubt. Matt Fratton, not a superstar, but a grinder who found himself with the puck on his stick and open ice ahead, broke in alone. A breakaway with the season on the line. Every Leafs fan held their breath. One fake to the backhand, a chance to silence the Garden, to slam the door shut for good. But the puck rolled awkwardly, skipped away, and the shot never came. A golden opportunity gone in an instant. In real time, it felt like just another missed chance. But looking back, everyone knows that was the moment the hockey gods turned. A 2-goal lead still felt safe, but when you fail to finish the team that's on the ropes, they sometimes find a way to stand back up. And Boston was standing taller by the second. James Reimer had been heroic throughout the series. He'd made save after save, keeping Toronto alive when no one thought they had a chance. But Boston had studied him closely. They knew his weakness, rebound control. He could block the first shot, but too often the puck spilled dangerously back into play. As the final minutes ticked away, the Bruins pressed harder. Pulling took a Rask for the extra attacker. Suddenly, it was a shooting gallery. Every puck was directed at Reimer, every rebound creating chaos in front of the net. The Leafs scrambled, sticks waving, bodies collapsing, but it was desperation more than structure. With just 1 minute and 22 seconds left, the dam finally burst. Zdeno Chara unleashed a booming shot from the point. Reimer stopped it, but the rebound kicked right back into traffic. Milan Lucic pounced, slamming it home. 4-3. The Garden erupted in pure bedlam. Toronto's bench looked rattled, but technically they still held the lead. There was still a chance to steady themselves, to grind out those last 82 seconds. But before the Leafs could even process what had happened, the Bruins struck again. This time it was Patrice Bergeron, the player who embodied Boston's resilience. Another shot, another rebound, and Bergeron, perfectly positioned, hammered it past Reimer. Tie game. 4-4. The TD Garden shook like it was about to collapse. Fans screamed in disbelief. The Bruins bench exploded, and on the other side, the Leafs sat frozen, their 3-goal lead gone in less than 10 minutes. You could see it in their faces. Reimer staring blankly, Dion Phaneuf trying to rally the troops, Kessel looking down at the ice. They weren't just shocked, they were broken. The collapse was complete, and the only question left was how much worse it would get, because everyone watching knew the same thing. Overtime wasn't going to save Toronto, it was only going to finish them. When regulation ended, the Leafs weren't celebrating surviving. They were stunned, pale, and staring at the scoreboard like it couldn't possibly be real. 10 minutes earlier, they had been coasting toward the second round. Now they were trapped in a sudden death overtime against a team that smelled blood and was fueled by one of the loudest crowds in hockey. The overtime began with a flicker of hope. Nazem Kadri, one of the young faces of this Leafs team, carried the puck and threaded a gorgeous pass to Joffrey Lupul right in the slot. It was the chance. The miracle shot to undo the collapse and rewrite the story. Lupul snapped it toward the net. Tuukka Rask, who had been beaten 4 times earlier, stood his ground and made not 1, but 2 jaw-dropping saves. In that moment, the Bruins weren't just surviving, they were thriving. From there, Boston suffocated Toronto. The Leafs barely touched the puck. Every dump-out was met with another wave of Bruins pressure. Every rebound from Reimer turned into another heart-stopping scramble in front of the crease. Toronto's players weren't skating to win anymore. They were skating in survival mode, desperately trying to avoid the inevitable. And then it came. The puck bounced loose in front after another frantic sequence, and standing in the perfect spot, as if destiny itself placed him there, was Patrice Bergeron. The man who had tied the game was about to end it. With one swing of his stick, he buried the rebound past Reimer. The horn blared, the Garden exploded, and the Bruins flooded the ice in triumph. The Leafs? They collapsed to the bench. Some players slumped forward in disbelief, disbelief, others just stared blankly into space. For them, there was no overtime. There was no Game 7 hero. There was only the cruelest ending imaginable. In one of the greatest comebacks in NHL history, Boston had erased a 4-1 deficit in the third period and crushed Toronto's dreams in overtime. For the Bruins, May 13th, 2013 became a night of legend, a comeback that captured the spirit of Boston strong and reminded the hockey world why they were never to be counted out. For the Leafs, it was devastation on a scale few fan bases could comprehend. A 4-1 lead in the third period of Game 7 wasn't just lost, it was ripped away in a storm of rebounds, momentum, and disbelief. What should have been their redemption became a nightmare that still defines them more than a decade later. For players like James Reimer, Dion Phaneuf, and Phil Kessel, the collapse became a permanent part of their legacy. For Leafs fans, 4-1 became a scar, a cruel shorthand for heartbreak that resurfaces every spring when hope dares to return. This wasn't just a loss, it was a collapse that rewrote the story of a franchise. A reminder that in hockey, no lead is safe and no nightmare is ever too far away.